The world was a graveyard of forgotten wonders, choked by the chaotic overgrowth of wild magic. Kael was a child of this graveyard, a scavenger who made his living by picking through the bones of a civilization that had touched the stars and then, in a single, silent moment, had fallen. It was a rustwalker, a ruin diver, a delver into the silent. Treacherous places that the sane folk of the scattered settlements avoided centuries ago. The world had been governed by the system, a benevolent, omniscient framework of structured magic that had turned life into a grand, predictable tapestry. Everyone had a class, a level, a clear path of progression. Magic was a science, its rules as immutable as gravity. Spells were cast with precision, their effects consistent and quantifiable. It was an age of unparalleled progress and stability. Then came the Great Silence. No one knew what caused it. There were no cataclysmic explosions, no epic wars recorded in the few surviving texts. One moment the system was there, a constant, comforting presence in the minds of all. The next, it was gone. The silence it left behind was not just an absence of sound, but an absence of order. Magic, untethered from the system's logic, became a wild, cancerous force. Spells fizzled into nothingness or erupted with catastrophic, unpredictable power. The very laws of physics became frayed at the edges. Cities built with structured magic crumbled as their foundations forgot the rules of geometry. Enchanted items became cursed artifacts, their once beneficial properties twisting into malevolent traps. The world was plunged into a dark age, a desperate struggle for survival in a reality that no longer played by the rules. Kael's world was this chaotic aftermath. The descendants of the system's users were now a scattered, superstitious people. Magic was a thing to be feared, a wild, an untamable force wielded only by the reckless or the insane. These wild mages could tap into the ambient chaos, but their power was a raging torrent, likely to consume them as their enemies. Kael made his living on the fringes of this chaos. In the dead zones, the ruins of the old world, these places were littered with the inert, powerless artifacts of the system's age, what the scavengers called system slag. Most of it was useless junk, armor that no longer held its enchantments, swords whose magical edges had long since faded. But occasionally, a scavenger might find something that still held a glimmer of its former function. A trinket that could be sold for a handful of rations in the rough and tumble settlement of Rusthaven. His current expedition had taken him to the ruins of the Ethelyn Spire, a place rumored to have been a center of learning in the old world. It was a treacherous place, the very air thick with the residue of wild magic, causing strange visual distortions and auditory hallucinations. He navigated the crumbling corridors, his worn leather boots crunching on a carpet of dust and shattered crystal. He had found little of value, a few inert power cores, a handful of uncorrupted metallic alloys. He was about to turn back when he noticed a faint rhythmic pulse of light emanating from a sealed chamber at the heart of the spire. It was a soft, blue glow, a stark contrast to the angry, chaotic flickers of wild magic that usually haunted these ruins. Curiosity, a dangerous trait for a scavenger, got the better of him. He spent the better part of a day prying open the massive, fused metal doors, his muscles straining, his breath a cloud in the chill air. When he finally managed to create a gap just wide enough to squeeze through, he was greeted by a sight that stopped his heart. The chamber was a pristine sphere of obsidian, untouched by the decay that had consumed the rest of the spire. In the center, floating in a containment field of shimmering blue light, was a perfect, multifaceted crystal, the source of the rhythmic pulse. It was a thing of impossible beauty, its internal geometry shifting and rearranging in an elegant, silent dance. Kael knew. With an instinct honed by years of sifting through the dregs of a forgotten age, that he had found something extraordinary. This was no mere system slag. This was something else as he cautiously approached. The blue light of the containment field seemed to reach out to him, a gentle, inquisitive tendril of energy. Touched his forehead. His world exploded. A torrent of pure, structured information flooded Kael's mind. It wasn't the chaotic, raging river of wild magic. It was a perfectly ordered, beautifully logical stream of data. For a terrifying moment, he felt his own consciousness dissolving, being categorized, analyzed, and integrated into something vast and unknowable. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence that returned was different. It wasn't the oppressive silence of the dead world. It was a clean, quiet space, waiting for input. In the top left of his vision, a translucent green bar shimmered into existence. HP, 100 100ths in the top. Right, another bar, this one blue. MP 50 50ths, he stared, his mind reeling. He stumbled back, shaking his head, but the bars remained, as solid and real as the crystal pulsing before him. He looked at his own hands, calloused and grimy from his work. A new window of text appeared. Kael, Scavenger, LVL1 stats, strength. STR, 8 dexterity dex, 10 constitution con, 9 intelligence int, 7 wisdom wis, 8 charisma cha, 6. He had stats, he had levels, he had The system, the crystal in the center of the room, pulsed one last time, its light dimming slightly. The containment field collapsed. The crystal fell to the floor with a soft chime. System core bonded welcome. User. Initializing skills unlocked. Observe novice new quest received. A new beginning objective. Survive. Survive. That was something Kael understood. But the world he had to survive in had just fundamentally changed. He cautiously picked up the crystal, now cool to the touch. It felt like a part of him, a silent, powerful presence thrumming in his mind. He stumbled out of the spire, his senses overwhelmed. He looked at the crumbling ruins, and his new observe skill activated automatically. Crumbling wall damaged. Structural integrity, 12%. A remnant of the ethylene spire shows signs of severe wild magic degradation. He saw a mutated cave rat, a common pest in the dead zones. The skill triggered again. Cave rat corrupted LVL to a small mammal, warped by wild magic. Weak, but aggressive. HB 15th, he was seeing the world in a new language, the language of the lost system. He was the only one who could hear its voice. The journey back to Rusthaven was a revelation. He saw the world with a clarity he had never known. He could identify edible plants and their properties with a single glance. He could see the structural weaknesses in treacherous terrain, allowing him to navigate with newfound safety. He even managed to avoid a nest of particularly nasty shadow weavers by noticing their hidden status tag. He was different. Powerful. His first taste of true power came when he was ambushed by a small pack of the corrupted cave rats. Normally, he would have fled, their numbers making a direct confrontation too risky. But now, he could see their health bars, their levels. He knew exactly how much punishment they could take. He picked up a sturdy piece of rusted pipe. Rusted pipe common, a crude, improvised weapon, deals 1-2-3 bludgeoning damage. He swung. The pipe connected with the first rat with a satisfying crunch, -2 HP. The rat squeaked in pain. He swung again and again, his movements guided by a new, almost instinctual understanding of combat. He could see the rat's attack patterns before they even lunged. When the last rat fell, a shower of faint shimmering light erupted from its body and flowed into him. A chime echoed in his mind. Plus 10 XP per kill. Total, 30 XP. You have reached level 2. Plus 2 stat points available. 1 skill point available. A wave of energy washed over him, healing his minor scratches, soothing his aching muscles. He felt stronger, faster, more alive than he had ever been. He had just killed 3 mutated rats with a piece of junk, and it felt like the greatest victory of his life. He allocated his stat points to strength and dexterity, feeling a tangible increase in his physical prowess. He looked at his available skills. There was only one option under the Combat tab: Power Strike Novice, a focused attack that deals 150% weapon damage. Cost 5 MP. He selected it without hesitation. Kael, the Scavenger, had just become a warrior, and he was the only one in the world who even knew what that meant. Kael's return to Rusthaven was different. Settlement, a chaotic jumble of scrap metal and salvaged technology. had always been a place of suspicion and guarded glances. But now, Kael could see the underlying data. He saw the levels of the other scavengers, the stats of the guards, the disposition of the merchants. His observe skill was a superpower in a world of the blind. He kept his abilities a secret, a difficult task in the crowded, claustrophobic confines of Rusthaven. He sold his salvaged alloys, feigning the usual level of exhaustion and minor injury. But inside he was a whirlwind of activity, studying his new interface, experimenting with his skills, meticulously planning his next move. He learned that the system core he carried was the source of his power, a direct link to the structured magic of the old world. It allowed him to absorb XP, to learn skills, to quantify the world around him. It was a priceless, unique artifact, and he knew that if anyone ever discovered its true nature, his life would be forfeit. He yearned to understand magic. He had seen wild mages in action, their power a terrifying, uncontrollable force. They would chant, their bodies writhing, and unleash blasts of raw energy that could incinerate a building, or backfire and turn them inside out. There was no rhyme or reason to it, only raw, chaotic power. Kael, however, had a skill tree. Under a tab labeled Magic, he saw a single, tantalizing option, Firebolt Novice, a small bolt of fire. That deals 5 to 8 fire damage. Cost 10 MP. It required 10 intelligence to unlock. His intelligence was only 7. For the next few weeks, Kael became the most diligent, most efficient scavenger Rusthaven had ever seen. He leveled up with a speed that would have been impossible for anyone else. He fought corrupted beasts in the dead zones, his combat skills growing with each victory. He completed self-generated quests, mapped the eastern tunnels clear, the shadow-weavered nest that granted him significant XP bonuses. With each level, he poured his stat points into intelligence. He felt his mind sharpening, his thoughts becoming clearer, his ability to process the system's data improving. Finally, at level 8, he reached the required 10 intelligence. He unlocked Firebolt. He went out into the dead zones to a secluded, ruined plaza. He held out his hand, focusing his will, channeling his mana. He felt the structured, orderly flow of magic through his body, a stark contrast to the chaotic energies he had always sensed in the world around him. A small, perfectly formed bolt of fire erupted from his palm and struck a crumbling wall, leaving a neat, scorched crater. It wasn't a raging inferno, not a chaotic explosion. It was precise, controlled, repeatable. He cast it again and again, his mana bar slowly depleting. This was magic as a science, as a tool. It was the magic of the old world. His practice was interrupted by a guttural roar. A hulking figure emerged from the shadows of a ruined building. It was Grak, a wild mage known for his violent temper and his dangerously unstable power. He was a brute of a man, his body covered in crudely tattooed symbols that supposedly helped him channel the chaotic energies. "You," Grak bellowed, his eyes wide with a mixture of rage and confusion. "What was that? That clean magic? It's an abomination." Kael knew he was in trouble. Grak was a powerful wild mage, his raw power far exceeding Kael's own, but Kael had a system. He used Observe. Grak, wild mage LVL-15, estimated a powerful but unstable practitioner of wild magic. Highly resistant to magical effects, but vulnerable during casting. HP 250/250ths, estimated MP? Erratic Grak began to chant, the air around him crackling with raw, untamed energy. The ground shook. Kael saw a new status effect appear over Grak's head, casting Unstable Firestorm Channeling. Time 5 seconds. Kael didn't hesitate. He cast Firebolt. The small, precise projectile flew through the air and struck Grak in the chest. 7 HPGAC staggered, his chant faltering. The damage was negligible, but the interruption was critical. He roared in frustration and began his chant again. Kael cast Firebolt again and again. He was like a persistent insect, his small, precise attacks disrupting the wild mage's slow, powerful casting. Grak, enraged, abandoned his spell and charged, his massive fists crackling with chaotic energy. Kael, with his higher dexterity, easily dodged the clumsy attack. He activated Power Strike, his rusted pipe glowing with a faint energy, and brought it down on Grak's exposed back. 12 HP. The fight was a David on Goliath struggle. Grak was a raging behemoth of raw power. Kael was a nimble, precise tactician, his every move guided by the cold, hard data of the system. The turning point came when Grak, in a fit of desperation, unleashed a massive, uncontrolled wave of chaotic energy. A notification flashed in Kael's vision. Wild magic surge detected. Evade immediately. Kael dove behind a ruined pillar just as the wave of energy washed over the plaza, tearing chunks of rock from the ground and causing the very air to shimmer. Grak, caught in his own blast, was sent flying, his body smoking. 85 HP. Kael emerged from cover, his body bruised but his resolve firm. Grak was injured, his health bar now a worrying shade of yellow. Kael pressed his advantage, his firebolts and power strikes finding their mark with relentless precision. Finally, the hulking wild mage collapsed, his body defeated not by superior power, but by superior tactics. Plus 500 XP. You have reached level 9. Plus 2 stat points available. Plus 1 skill point available. Achievement unlocked. Tamer of the Wild. Kael stood over the defeated wild mage, his heart pounding. He had just defeated one of the most feared individuals in Rusthaven, and he had done it with a power that no one else in the world understood, but he knew his secret wouldn't remain one for long. Grak had seen his clean magic. The whispers would begin. Kael was no longer just a scavenger. He was an anomaly, an unnatural mage, and the world was not a kind place for those who were different. Grak, humbled and terrified by Kael's inexplicable power, fled Rusthaven, his wild tales of a system which largely dismissed as the ravings of a madman. But the encounter had taught Kael a valuable lesson. His power made him a target, had to grow stronger, faster. He left Rusthaven behind, venturing deeper into the dead zones than any scavenger dared. He was no longer just looking for scrap. He was looking for knowledge, the remnants of the old world that could help him understand the system he now wielded. His journey led him to the sunken library of Ethel, a vast repository of knowledge from the system's age, now submerged in a murky, monster-infested swamp. It was a place of legend, a place from which no scavenger had ever returned. Kael, his ability to observe hidden dangers and his growing arsenal of skills, navigated the treacherous swamp with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He fought off mutated swamp creatures, their forms twisted by centuries of exposure to wild magic. He used his growing magical abilities to purify stagnant water and to create paths of solid earth over the murky depths. He found the entrance to the sunken library, a massive sealed doorway covered in glowing, inert runes. A puzzle lock, unsolvable for centuries, barred the way. But Kael could see the underlying code, the logical sequence required to activate the runes. It was a simple matter of tapping them in the correct order. It's a sequence that was laid out for him like a child's puzzle. The doors opened, stepped into a world of preserved knowledge. The library was an architectural marvel. It's vast, halls protected from the swamp by a shimmering, self-repairing energy field. The air was still and silent, the only sound the faint hum of ancient, still-functioning systems. He found data crystals containing histories of the system's age, textbooks on the theory of structured magic, even personal logs of the long dead. Inhabitants of this world. He spent weeks, perhaps even months, in the silent library, absorbing knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom. Stats skyrocketing with each new discovery. He learned about the different classes of the old world: warriors, mages, rogues, priests. He learned about crafting, enchanting, alchemy, all lost arts. He even found fragmented data logs that spoke of the Great Silence. Though the cause remained a mystery, the final entries always cut off abruptly. One of the most valuable discoveries was a series of training manuals for different classes. While he couldn't adopt a new class himself, his bond with the system core seemed to preclude it. He could learn their skills. New skill, available for learning, Stealth Novice. Requires 1 skill point and 15 dex. New skill available. For learning, Minor Heal Novice requires 1 skill point and 15 WIS new skill available for learning. Shield Bash Novice requires 1 skill point and 15 STR. He became a jack of all trades, a one-man adventuring party. He could sneak past powerful enemies, heal his own wounds, and fight with a growing arsenal of combat skills. He also found artifacts, items of power from the old world that still retained their enchantments. A pair of boots of swiftness that increased his dexterity, a ring of regeneration that slowly restored his health, an amulet of mana which greatly increased his mana pool, allowing him to cast more powerful spells. These items, useless to anyone else, were priceless treasures. To him, his long sojourn in the sunken library was interrupted by the arrival of another scavenger, a young woman named Alara. Her face streaked with grime, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. She had managed to bypass the swamps, outer dangers through sheer luck and willpower, but she was now trapped. Unable to solve the puzzle of the library's entrance, Kael, hidden by his stealth skill, observed her for a long time. She was different from the other scavengers. He had known there was a hunger for knowledge in her eyes, a fascination with the ruins that went beyond mere survival. He made a decision, a risky one. He revealed himself. Alara was terrified at first, drawing a crude, sharpened piece of scrap metal. Kael's calm demeanor, and the fact that he was inexplicably inside the legendary sunken library, eventually won her trust. He showed her the wonders of the library, the preserved knowledge of a lost age. Alara was enthralled. She was a scholar at heart, trapped in the body of a scavenger. He also tentatively showed her his power. He cast a simple firebolt. It's clean. Controlled flame, a stark contrast to the chaotic energies of the world outside. Alara's reaction was not fear, but awe. How? She whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. How do you control it? The magic, it's pure. Kael, for the first time, felt the urge to share his secret. He was tired of being alone, of carrying the weight of his unique existence. In silence, he showed her his system interface, the health bars, the stats, the skills, Alara. A quick and brilliant mind grasped the implications immediately. The system. It's not dead, she breathed. It's in you. She became his first and only student, his first true ally. He couldn't give her a system of her own. The bond with the core was unique to him, but he could teach her the principles of structured magic. It's the logical framework that underpinned his abilities. They studied together in the silent library, Kael acting as the bridge between Alara and the structured magic of the past. She learned to focus her will, to draw upon the ambient magical energies with a newfound control. Her progress was slow, her spells still prone to occasional backfires, but she was learning. She was becoming the world's first system-adjacent mage. Their peaceful existence was shattered by the arrival of a new threat. A warlord, known only as the Tyrant of the Wastes, had begun to unite the scattered tribes of the Dead Zones under his iron fist. He was a powerful wild mage, his body twisted and scarred by the chaotic energies he commanded. He sought the lost artifacts of the old world. Believing they could grant him ultimate power, the tyrant learned of the sunken library and the unnatural mage who resided there. He saw Kael not as a curiosity, but as a rival, a potential threat to his growing empire. He marched his army of wasteland warriors and mutated beasts towards the swamp. Determined to claim the library's secrets for himself, Kael and Alara found themselves facing an army. Their own power had grown significantly. Kael was now a high-level adventurer, his stats far exceeding those of any normal human. Alara, under his tutelage, had become a formidable mage in her own right. Her control over wild magic refined by the principles of the system, but they were only 2 people against hundreds. The battle for the sunken library was a desperate, brutal affair. Kael and Alara used the library's ancient defenses, reactivating automated turrets and energy fields that had been dormant for centuries. Kael, a whirlwind of combat skills and magical attacks, held the main entrance against waves of wasteland. warriors. Ilara, perched atop the library's central spire, rained down powerful, semi-controlled magical barrages upon the enemy forces. The tyrant, a towering figure clad in scavenged power armor, finally entered the fray. He was a maelstrom of chaotic energy, its wild magic tearing through the library's defenses. The final confrontation took place in the library's grand atrium. Kael and the tyrant clashed, a battle of order versus chaos, of structured power versus raw, untamed fury. The tyrant was immensely powerful, his every attack a wave of destructive energy. But Kael had the system, could see the tyrant's weaknesses, the subtle tells in his casting, the moments of vulnerability between his attacks. Tyrant of the Wastes, LVL 45 estimated, a master of chaotic wild magic, highly resistant to physical damage, vulnerable to structured, focused energy attacks. Kael adapted his tactics. He used his agility to dodge the tyrant's wide, sweeping attacks, his magical shields to deflect the worst of the chaotic energies. He focused his own attacks, his firebolts now upgraded to fire lances, his power strikes imbued with elemental energy. The battle raged, the library's ancient walls groaning under the strain of the conflicting magical forces. Ilara provided support from a distance, her own spells now more controlled, more precise. A testament to what she had learned from Kael. The turning point came when the tyrant, in a final desperate gambit, began to draw upon the ambient wild magic of the swamp, attempting to unleash a spell of apocalyptic power. Kael saw his opening. The tyrant was channeling immense power, but he was also completely exposed, his personal defenses lowered. Kael channeled all his remaining mana into a single, devastating attack. A skill he had learned from a forgotten archmage's textbook, Arcane Overload. A beam of pure, white, structured energy erupted from Kael's hands and struck the tyrant square in the chest. The chaotic wild magic the tyrant had gathered turned in on itself, consumed by the pure, orderly logic of Kael's spell. The tyrant screamed, his body dissolving into a shower of corrupted energy. The battle was over. Asterisk, in the aftermath of the battle, Kael and Ilara stood amidst the ruins of the library's atrium. The tyrant's army had scattered, their leader defeated. The sunken library was safe. Kael looked at the system core, which he now wore in a specially crafted harness on his chest. It pulsed with a steady, reassuring light. He had survived, had grown strong, he'd even found a companion in this lonely, broken world. But his journey was far from over. The world was still a chaotic, dangerous place. The secrets of the Great Silence were still buried in the past, and he was still the only one who could hear the last echo of the system. Ilara came to stand beside him. "What now?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. Kael looked out at the ravaged swamp, at the faint glow of the distant settlements on the horizon. He had a choice. He could remain hidden in the library, a king of a forgotten kingdom, his power a secret known only to him and Ilara. Or he could venture out into the world, not as a scavenger, but as something more. He had the power to bring order to the chaos, to teach others the lost art of structured magic, to, perhaps, one day restore some semblance of the old world's stability. It was a dangerous path, one that would make him a target for those who thrived in the chaos. But it was a path with purpose. He thought of the quest the system had given him on that first day. The only quest that truly mattered: survive. He had done that. But now, he understood that survival wasn't enough. Now, Kael said, a determined glint in his eye, we begin to rebuild. He was Kael, the inheritor of the last echo. He was the only one who could hear the voice of the lost system. And in a world of silence, he would be the one to teach it how to sing again. His journey was no longer just about survival. It was about creating a new future, a new harmony between the structured magic of the past and the chaotic, vibrant and untamed world of the present. The age of silence was over. A new age, an age of echoes, was about to begin.